Welcome to Leadership Lessons. My name is Todd Gray with Kentucky Baptist Convention. This is a time for learning from other leaders, and one of those guys is Pastor Jamaal Williams at Sojourn Church Midtown in Louisville. And I can't wait to ask Jamaal a whole lot of questions. Just an exciting ministry he's part of, and unique in the state of Kentucky, and even unique in Louisville in many ways. I want to give a quick update on some disaster relief work that's happening in Kentucky. Our folks are all the time asking about DR and how are people involved with the tornadoes that went through the western part of our state. Currently, Kentucky Baptist Convention has organized about 5 locations for disaster relief laborers, actually 4 locations that are working in multiple spots. We're in Mayfield, Benton, Bowling Green, Princeton, Dawson Springs, also looking into Casey, Kentucky, which got hit really, really hard. Some things that your DR volunteers and workers are doing, they're putting tarps on the roofs of houses that have a lot of damage. They're cleaning roads and driveways. Trees are down everywhere, picking up and cleaning debris, feeding people, ministering and encouraging people, doing some simple repair that can be done. And Pastor Jamaal, you'll appreciate this. In some cases, the work they came to do is not what they can actually are able to do right now. But in many cases, they're just helping folks sort through their belongings and look for things that are precious to the homeowner and helping them find what they're looking for. Man, they are absolutely serving people in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. And that's happening all over west and western parts of our state. And people have responded incredibly with gifts, donations, supplies, volunteer labor. Many Kentucky Baptists are certified to do disaster relief ministry, but even folks who aren't certified are finding ways to serve. We have people coming in from Southern Baptist Disaster Relief in Texas, Missouri, Illinois, North Carolina, and there's another state that I'm failing to mention at the moment. But it's just been an incredible outpouring of love and mercy and grace. And man, our goal is to serve people in need, but also to help empower, equip, support local pastors and church leaders who are going to be there long term. The time's coming when all these volunteers are going to leave, but the ones that won't leave are going to be the pastors and churches who are already there. And our desire is just to support them and encourage them in long-term faithful service. So, Jamaal, I say all that, man, your church has been supporting cooperative program ministry for a long, long time. You'll be pleased to know this. From 2002, is that around when Sojourn work was started in early
Yeah, it was planted in 2000. Yep.
All right. So since that time, you may not know this number, your church and the ones associated with you all have sent nearly $500,000, $474,879.69 to fund ministry nationwide, things like disaster relief through cooperative program. You've also baptized more than 580 people during that during that, and we don't even have all the numbers. We have some years where numbers are missing. So having said all that, Pastor Jamaal, welcome to Leadership Lessons.
Well, thank you. And to all those who are impacted by the tornado, just want you to know that Sojourn is praying for you. Sent out an email today sending a link out in ways that our church can get involved through Kentucky Baptist Convention's disaster relief. So we're just proud to be a part of such a movement. Thankful for your leadership, Dr. Gray.
We have no idea what all God's going to do through this disaster, and so many lives lost and people have lost belongings. And yet at the same time, here comes a gospel fueled ministry and gospel conversations happening all over some places where people are probably open to hearing some hope and good news. Well, Jamaal, let's get started here real quick. We're in the Christmas season. Tell us one of your favorite Christmas traditions, something that you and your family enjoy around Christmas.
Yeah. Honestly, we enjoy going to our 11 p.m. Christmas Eve service together.
Really?
Yeah. So at Sojourn, we have a 11 p.m. service, and we get to bring in Christmas singing, Silent Night together, turn off all the lights next to my kids, next to my wife. And this is one of the most moving things every year, singing Silent Night and having an empty sanctuary, everyone holding a candle and bringing in Christmas. And that's probably one of my favorite things to do.
Is that open to the public?
It is. So we have service at 11 p.m. It's about an hour. And right at midnight, we just shut off the lights and sing together and bring in Christmas. So, yeah.
Do you preach during that time?
We normally have a smaller homily, about a 15-minute sermon. This year, it's going to be a gospel presentation.
Okay, man,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I visited your church a couple of years ago, and just I love the setting. I love exactly where you're located. God did a great thing, obviously, in everything the Lord does, but in calling Sojourn Work into existence and how you're leading there now. Well, let's tell folks a little bit about you. So, tell us about your family.
Yep.
You're married, have children.
I am married to Amber. We've been married 12 years. Got married in 2009, and we've got 5 kids. So 11, 10, 9, and 2 twins that's 5 years old. So it's a fun household, fun times, and they keep us on our toes, and we love them. So
girls and boys?
Yeah, we've got 3 boys and 2 girls. The first one is a girl, and the last 2, the twins, are boys.
That's very exciting. Mm-hmm. When did you receive the Lord, Jamaal? How did you end up becoming a Christian?
Yeah, I became a Christian at 10. And it's interesting. My father was not in church. He was actually a deacon in the church, but was not a Christian. And him and my mother had a very rough marriage, and very verbally just violent. And I got to see the Lord change his heart one day, just convicted him. And I remember him going to work one way and coming home, saying that the Lord convicted him through a number of means that day. And he was a different man, and started leading our household with sincerity, gave his life to Jesus. And about 2 months later, I saw him and my mother get into an argument on the way to Bible study that he was actually teaching with our family, our extended family, in my grandmother's house. And I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, it's been 2 months of peace and bliss, and I'm taking their faith serious. And it's all about to revert back to where it was. But that night, before he led a Bible study at my grandparents' house, he asked my mother to forgive him. And she wept, and they wept, and he confessed to this small group about the things that he had said, and how in the rush of trying to get there on time, he had been unkind. And they both just wept. And I just remember that night him sharing the gospel clearly. He knew it, even as being a deacon of a church. I just think it was just a religious, and the Lord led him to a relationship. And I remember I felt like the Lord softened my heart that night, and a little time later was baptized, and have been walking with the Lord imperfectly, but I believe faithfully since. So,
Jamaal, you saw authentic Christianity lived out right there at that moment as in your own home. Our guest here last week was Eric Allen, and Eric had his dad was actually an alcoholic before he got saved, and he saw that change just as you did, and boy, sounds like your dad really got active in ministry pretty quick. And
he did. He actually, a few years later, planted a church in Chicago, and the Lord blessed it, and it went on for about. He did that for about 22 years before recently retiring about 4 years ago. So
okay. And so how old were you when you answered the call to ministry, and how'd that call come to you?
Yeah, mine is a little more of a unique call. But I became a licensed minister in college at around the age of 23. Actually, I make that up. I would have been 20. And it was through a Southern Baptist church plant. Pastor Stan Parker went a bit wayward my freshman year and sophomore year in college, and he had a campus ministry through InterVarsity. Met him in a grocery store. He discipled me, and through that process, received a call from the ministry and from the church, and ended up eventually coming on staff there before moving down to Louisville, Kentucky.
The number of people impacted through campus ministry, only heaven's going to tell that story.
That's right.
Yeah, because like in our case, the BCM work that we do, KBC through cooperative program giving of churches like yours, has about 8 BCM regional campus ministers, but then that's multiplied to touch other. In fact, we have a goal of being in 50 other colleges apart from the main ones that we serve: U of L, UK, EKU, K-State, etc. And sometimes they're groups, they'll have 100 gathering, sometimes up to 200 gathering, but man, their impact is through that one-on-one relationship, exactly like you're describing. And leaders go out of campus ministry. They come in, students probably as dumb and messed up as I was, but they leave in many cases leaders.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. It's true.
Well, prior to your role at Sojourn, you pastored another church here in Louisville. Tell us about that church and kind of what drew you here to Louisville.
Yeah, so in 2003, got involved in campus ministry, got connected to that church, and then in 2006, since the call of ministry, wanting to sharpen my tools as a minister of the gospel, came down to Louisville to go to Southern Seminary. And while at Southern Seminary, I took a youth pastor at a church called Forest Baptist Church, where Pastor Nathaniel Bishop Jr. is now pastoring, good friend of mine's, and was a youth pastor there. The pastor essentially resigned in 2008, and the church just asked me to fill in to preach for a little while as they found someone else. And about 6 months later, they came to me and said, "Hey, we feel the Lord calling you to pastor us." So I got to pastor Forest Baptist, which is a historic African American church. It should be about 153 years old now, and it was just a great place to minister and to do life. Very sweet church, doing a lot of great work in their community.
And Pastor Nate is doing a great job there now. And I'm going to come back in a minute about your connection with him. Could you tell in a minute or two a little bit of the history of Forest Baptist that folks just wouldn't know in Louisville, how it came about, how it became a church?
Yeah, Forest Baptist Church is named after the fact that it was founded in the forest near where the church is by former slaves. It's where the invisible institution, African Americans would gather to worship before they could actually worship corporately and legally. So they would sneak off into the woods and worship Jesus from where they wouldn't be under the master's eye. And so that church eventually started there. It got help from Green Street Baptist Church, which was another established church in the downtown area of Louisville, to actually begin a church, and gave them funds and resources and people so that community could have a church. It's in the Newburgh area of Louisville, and if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the first areas that African Americans could actually own land in the city. And so, rich legacy.
Pastor Jamaal, when you were serving there as pastor and you all would have your traditions as a church, how did the history of the church and its origins, what role did that play in your annual celebrations, things that you did, stories that you told, and then what application did that have in the lives of members?
Yeah, Forest is really a jewel to that Newburgh area. And I just love, we had some senior members who would just retell being baptized in nearby lakes, and their parents and grandparents, everyone was kind of involved in some way in that church, which just made for just a rich retelling of that history. It was very important. We used to have church anniversaries. We would just kind of retell the same stories for the next generation so that people know the sacrifices that were made for that church to have land, as well as just the unique opportunities that came for that church to minister to the community. So even if people weren't a part of the church, you walk around and you talk to enough people in Newburgh, they'll know someone who went there or some way have a story about how Forest ministered to them or their family.
I mean, that's a Hebrews 11 experience, remembering your forefathers and going from those members who made they made a real sacrifice, a real physical sacrifice to be able to worship together, and that's a legacy that's just that gets carried on when you're part of that. So I appreciate your church. So how did you end up at Sojourn? How'd you get there?
Yeah. So I pastored Forest, enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it. Just such a great community. And we saw the Lord do just a number of wonderful things in 8 years. And it was like a family. I remember Dr. Gray, preaching one Sunday and telling the church, kind of casting vision as I preached and saying, when my kids are in high school and they're here, and when we send them off to college, and one of the mothers afterwards came to me and said, "Reverend, don't lie to these people. You're not God. You don't know if you're going to be here that long." And I remember thinking to myself, I am going to die at Forest Baptist Church. We love this church. Yeah. And she reminded me of that when the Lord called us away. So So I learned a great lesson on leadership and casting vision there. But
And on
yeah, so
assignments, Jamal, we're all
yeah,
interims. We're
we all
all
like,
interims, brother, wherever we are.
yeah. And so, long story short, I started pastoring Forest relatively young, and I might be off by a year or so here, but I want to say I was like 24, 25 when the interim kicked in,
Yeah.
maybe 26 when I became the lead pastor. And it was unexpected. I was headed in my mind back to Chicago, came down to Southern to get a degree, wanted to go back to Chicago to do some work. My father was pastor and wanted to kind of help him out at his church and run a inner city nonprofit ministry, ministering to young men who was kind of caught up in the gang culture, as well as just helping families in the inner city. So I kind of had my vision for the next 10, 15 years of my life. And so when I got called to Force, it was a little premature. My pastor, again, my father being a church planner, I'm like, I'm gonna wait till I'm older. I know the Lord's called me to pastor, but hopefully it's going to happen when I'm in my 40s or 50s. And so around the 8-year mark, I just began to sense that in starting so young, I've got a young family now, that I just feel like the Lord was telling me that my time there was done. Didn't really understand that. Reached out to some mentors. They encouraged me to get away on a silent retreat. Got away on a silent retreat for a week to pray. And while I was there, bumped into someone who, one of the elders here at Sojourn, a former pastor who was there. And we both were at a monastery, just getting away to be quiet. And we ended up having a conversation in which he was there thinking about the next 10 years and shifting into a different role at Sojourn. And so through that, over the next 4 months, began to talk to the elders of Sojourn, as well as our elders at Forest, as they were seeking, where we are is a very diverse area, a large African-American community, and they were seeking a lead pastor that could help reach the community. And so we actually involved the elders as well as our church into that process as best we could. And our church knew 6 months before my first day at Sojourn. And so it was really sweet. It was almost ascending out and ascending away. And we're close to them to this day.
That's uncommon, and it's interesting to hear how they were involved with you in that decision. I'm sure that it was becoming clear to you and your wife, your family, and leaders at Sojourn, it was becoming clear to them as well that they didn't want to see you go, but they want to see you in the center of God's will.
Yeah. And Dr. Gray, I think part of it too, while we were at Sojourn, my wife and I both lived a very multicultural, multi-ethnic lifestyle. And even going back to college, the campus ministry that I was on, we just looked back and saw fruit of God developing diverse spaces where I was leading and just being able to cross those boundaries. And so even our church began to recognize that as Forest, a historic African-American church, started to see a lot of our Hispanic ministry really begin to grow and other ministries. And so we were looking at Sojourn, the area that they were, the impact that they've had in the Southern Baptist Convention with missions. At the time, we were 99%, maybe white church in a very diverse area, and the elders really felt that. And so we felt that maybe the Lord wanted to do something through us, and it was hard, and we wept, and our church wept, but man, they blessed us in leaving, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
So am I understanding right that when you came to Sojourn as pastor, that the demographic makeup was 99% white congregation? Is that?
Yes, it was definitely a majority white congregation. I don't have specific, but it was a high 90s for sure.
So I visited the church. I saw what it looks like now. How would you describe the church today?
Yeah, pre-pandemic, we were very, very diverse. We had started a Latino ministry, and where we have live translations happening on Sundays, as well as started a Congolese congregation. And so we've got a lot, Asian, Arab, Latino, African-American church, and we've grown in diversity. I don't know statistics now,
That's okay.
COVID, but I'm guessing 70-30. if I had to put it.
I'm scrolling through your staff page right now, Jamaal,
Yeah.
and it's just an incredible staff of folks that you've got working there with you.
Thank you.
Man, the Sunday I visited, you guys, all the worship was in English, but I don't know how many different ethnicities were represented in the worship time. It was. Can you describe a little bit of that? Because I won't use the right language, but there
Yeah.
were songs that had a traditional African American feel to them,
Yeah.
and not just the not I mean not I mean, rhythmically it did, and then there was Latino approach to
Yeah.
worship. Any thoughts on that you could share with us? I know it's
Yeah.
intentional.
No, it is intentional, and I think for churches, one of my convictions, Dr. Gray, and the things I've just come to is a couple convictions. One is I think a church should do their best to know the demographics of the community and to reach out to those persons there. And ultimately, our goal should be a church, not that's building on top of a community, but that's within a community,
Yeah.
and that makes that local church home to the community. And so we won't be able to do everything with every demographic, but we want them to come in and be like, man, this church is intentional. And so if we have someone, which we do, and that's kind of how it started, who is Haitian and speaks Creole, we want to see, are any of the songs we're doing, can we do a verse in their native language where they can lead and we can have the words in English, or if they're Spanish. So we try to just naturally put on display whoever we have in their culture, and try to cross those boundaries, because we really do want it to feel like home. And and not only just that, but even whether it's gospel, bluegrass, like even the different styles of music, if it's Christ centered, we want to be able to sing it in different genres as our talent allows, so that our members are learning to put down their preferences and pick up their crosses even as they worship.
It was an exciting time for our family to attend. Um, any idea what? And you may not know any of this. It's okay. But what I noticed was that your parking lots are full. Parking's a challenge for you guys. But it looked like a lot of folks were just walking in from the neighborhood. A lot of people walk to church
Yeah.
at Sojourn. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
By God's
That's
grace. Yeah.
that's what you want. Is you if you're in a community that folks can get to you, they want to. Well, Jamaal, I know that when you all, I mean, not when you started, but you were a collective of 6 different locations in Louisville. Have
Mhm.
you all had? Is that still the case, or has there been a restructuring since then, or where is that now? Tell us a little bit about those 6 locations and how it stands today.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, there has been restructuring, and I think, as we've just grown as churches, yeah, it's kind of looked differently in how we
Sure.
relate to each other. And so right now we are 6 uh, autonomous churches, and moving more towards that. But we say one Sojourn. And so
Yeah.
each of us share the name Sojourn, because we kind of share very similar mission, visions, and values, and we partner together in very specific ways.
Okay.
But whereas in the past we use collective services, where each of our churches kind of can benefit from certain staff persons who may have served all of our churches. We've more and more moved to each church having their own staff. And so we're not built around services as much as we are relationships, and partnering specifically in Kentuckiana, together. So, yeah.
So now you're moving just to more of a cooperating relationship
Yeah.
together, working together on some common things without some of the connections that you would have had before. What do you see as a couple of benefits to the model that you're living out right now? How do you
Yeah.
see that being helpful to each individual church?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure each of our pastors will probably answer it a little differently, as we all have different relationships uh, with each other, and where our churches are. I think the biggest benefit right now is that I enjoy personally is just a relationship with those 6 pastors. We've just got a shared history together. And so we talk twice a month. We meet together to just discuss preaching and to pray with one another. And that's just very helpful. And to talk about trends, things that we're seeing. So we share about 70% of the time we're preaching through the same book,
Okay.
same passage. and just kind of sharpening each other. And I've learned so much about preaching and spiritual formation through each of those guys. I also would just say, you know, um, our staff and different like persons have relationships that's more organic. So our youth pastor, our children's minister, we've got Kentucky Baptists that we can lean into, and Kentucky Baptist churches where they know, hey, we can go to our convention. We also have people within those churches too that they can go to. I think the greatest strength is just us being able to start churches, and that really was the goal. And so just a couple years ago, a church that's very respected and that we love deeply, Carlisle
Yeah.
Baptist Rich History, reached out to us, and we did a merger in which became Sojourn Carlisle and became a Sojourn family. And all the churches, 5 churches, came together to make sure that one church was taken care of, had a runway in which it can be successful. And now it's doing really well. They're reaching their community. Pastor James is doing great. So,
and so is Sojourn Carlisle now? It's kind of one of the 6 of your cooperating partners.
Yeah.
And then you all would hope to do more of that kind of thing, I suppose, to multiply beyond. I mean, Louisville's a good sized city, and it's probably 90% not in any church anywhere on Sunday mornings, just probably the reality. So there's lots of rooms for more churches reaching people.
And that's it. And it really has worked for us. We don't go out looking for those opportunities. Each of our churches, maybe other than one, was simply another church who was dying, reaching out and saying, hey, we have this property. Some of our friends or people have visited your church and think that the way that you all approach mission would fit in this particular neighborhood.
Yeah, well, that's very exciting. Well, I'm kind of, again, I've got your staff page opened up here on my phone, and you've got a couple of pretty heavy hitting preaching folks that attend. You've got Timothy Paul Jones, and you've got Jarvis Williams, and so these are, I mean, these are pretty sharp guys. They're theologically astute. They're seminary professors. And you're obviously a sharp guy. How does it feel to you preaching to seminary professors, Jamaal? Is there any intimidation factor?
I think all of them are just men I just deeply respect and love. And what I love about all of them from day one, when I came to Sojourn, is they just want to hear the Bible preached, and they don't want to just hear it preached to them. They're like, hey, can you preach it in a way that my teenagers understand it? And we've got people in our community who's not in seminary, and our church, have a lot of, just like you said, people from maybe surrounding neighborhoods or neighborhoods coming there, like, make sure they are being reached. And so each of those guys are friends, and I love them. And sometimes when we have guest preachers, recently had someone come and preach, and they were like, is that Jarvis Williams preaching? Oh, and he's got nervous. I was like, don't try to impress him. Just preach the word.
Just preach the word.
Just like I need the word. And so it's fun. It's fun. It is intimidating when you preach through a book of the Bible that maybe one of them has written a commentary.
They wrote a commentary.
You read what they said, and you're like, I actually respectfully disagree, right? That's always fun.
Oh, that's great.
They just give me which seldom happens with me disagreeing with them. And if so, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. It just preaches better what I'm.
That's hilarious. One commentator who will remain unnamed in this message says this about this text. I happen to disagree. So do you share the pulpit? Do those guys step in for you from time to time?
Oh man, not only them, but other pastors. Those guys are kind of our preaching pastors, but we have elders that preach. And so every year I get to preach a little less and focus on writing and discipleship formation. But on an average year, I do maybe 30 sermons a year out of 52.
So right now you're around 30 Sundays you're preaching, and that's encouraging, and I mean the size church that you all are, the number of things that you're doing, folks from the outside would hear that and think, well, that's a lot of days away. Man, there's a ton of administrative work involved in your work, and then the leadership that you're trying to give to the larger vision. I'm glad you have some folks to share the work with you. One of your staff members is, if you find him again, Jason Stevens. He's pastor of Sojourn College. You all are uniquely positioned near U of L to reach college students. Tell us a little bit about your college ministry and maybe a story or two of how you've seen God use it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're on U of L campus as well as other universities here, and we just try to be a faithful presence and come alongside other great college ministries, such as the ones that our convention has, and others, and just be a gospel presence. And the Lord is blessed. I think this past year, we were just really trying to get our students out to share their faith. And by God's grace, we were able since January to experience, I think, like 10 of our 55 baptisms that we experienced as a church have been college students.
Wow.
And so I'm just so proud of our college students for sharing their faith and just going out and being faithful with the gospel. So we've got some really fun stories of people being saved just from just complete, kind of atheistic or agnostic beliefs. But we also have, which is also common, people growing up in church all their life and then realizing like, I've never really accepted the gospel, right? It's kind of this works-based righteousness. And so those are fun as well. I think what I'm most proud of our team is that our college ministry has now begun to operate with our Sent ministry. So we've got about 40 units or on the mission field from Midtown. And now they have something called Acts 1-8, where college students get to go in the summer to serve on a team or to visit some of these teams. And so we have 11 students signed up this summer to go abroad and to do missions. And out of that, almost every year, we have someone receive a call to international missions. And so I've really been excited about how they're using it. They also have, I was talking to Jason recently, and I was really thankful that 75 of our college students are connected to what we call discipleship groups, which is an intense year and a half, A through Z of Christianity, small group process. So to know that 75 students are being linked up with a strong person to disciple them and to help them to walk through basic spiritual formation is really something that I think they're doing well.
And Jamaal, you all have sent several students through IMB. Is that right?
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah. A lot of our students go through IMB as well as our sent ones.
And I should have said IMB, International Mission Board, Southern Baptist. We have a lot of acrostics that we use, and we just kind of throw those letters around. Yeah. Well, and it's awesome. And so you're in a good spot. And again, you're looking like your community. You're at the place where the Lord put you and impacting the area around you. Yeah. So you have a good sized staff, and it looks like a fairly young staff in many ways. How do you invest in your staff members as a church to keep develop? So here's what I started. Let me give you the background. I interviewed a guy who does a lot of hiring, or he trains folks to do a lot of hiring. I said, "What's the best advice on hiring?" And he said, "Well, number one, don't hire in your own image. That's important. They've already got you. They don't need two of you." Yeah. And then a second thing is, don't worry about long term. He said hire someone that you can make better in 3 to 5 years. That in 3 to 5 years they're going to be better than they are when they come in. And then once they're better, try to hang on to them as best you can. But don't worry about that up front. What do you do to invest in your staff that you got great folks working with you? How do you pour into it?
It's a great question. I think the advice you just gave is that someone just gave is honestly just really good, and I think we would ascribe to that. If you take someone like a Jason Stevens, who I think the world of, and he's just a great leader, great preacher, right? He comes kind of knowing that he has a call to ministry and is looking to sharpen that. He was in a discipleship group of mine, and that's sometimes how it happens within people who come on staff. We've just seen them in our ministries kind of growing, gotten to know them. Openings happen. They come on staff, and then as their own staff, they're like, "Hey, we want to do this," whether it's Jason or others. "Hey, I feel a call to plant a church." So then we look at saying, how do we help maximize who they are as individuals, so to just grow them in self-awareness as well as leadership gifts, and then how do we set them up to be sent, whether that's through missions or church planting or into their next call. So we really don't have the perspective of everyone's going to be here forever. I think that's something that precedes me. Sojourn has always taken pride of, they say, sending our best and our brightest, right? Yeah. And not holding on to them, but saying, "Hey, we want to invest in you. We want to build you up." And so we do that through intentional discipleship. We also have a leadership cohort that meets every other week at like 6:30. We do
Oh,
to 8. And man, we'd love to have you come in at some point and talk to them as well. And these are just budding leaders that
yeah.
we see they have a specific call. Some of them are trying to figure that out, but there's some sort of call there. And we teach them to how do you lead self, how do you lead others, and how do you lead organizations. And we try to get people in front of them that can help them. And they do life together for about 2 years, and then we send them out.
Jamaal, that's incredible. Especially that cohort work that you do and bringing other folks in. Man, I don't know. I don't think it's just me, but 1 Corinthians 11 verse 1, the Apostle Paul said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." That's what he said. In 2 Timothy 2:2, he told Timothy, "Things you've seen in me, and trust these faithful men." But it's what he saw, and man, I got saved when I was 24. I started pastoring like 2 years later. I haven't even listened to that many sermons. Never
Yeah.
preached one, maybe one, and well, I actually preached a few more. But my only example was my pastor. That's what I had, and so when I'm pastoring a church, the only training I had was to just think back and remember, what did Bob Latham do
Yeah.
at Lord's Supper? What did he do in the baptistry? What did he
Right.
do at business meeting? And so, man, good job to you for setting some folks in front of them. Well, one person who answered the call that you had influence on, we've already mentioned, is Pastor Nate Bishop at Forest. And so you were at Forest and invited Pastor Nate on staff. Is that correct?
Correct. I was at Forest. Nate was in Michigan. We were praying for a family pastor, and I literally knew him from when I was in Michigan. And I talked to my pastor, and we prayed. I was like, "Lord, send me someone like Nate Bishop."
Yeah.
So Nate already had great training in ministry. He came and became an elder at the church, and I just got to encourage him and call out the gifts that I saw in him. I knew the Lord was calling him to be a lead pastor someday, and it was just a joy to be able to watch him kind of embrace that call and walk in it.
He's an incredible pastor.
It was
And
incredible.
and when you left Sojourn, there were, if I understand right, there were a couple of men in the church who had some pastor ability, and Nate just kind of emerged through their prayerful efforts, and now is leading that congregation.
Mhm. That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Well,
Yeah.
it's been a good transition and a good one to watch. So what are you pour into these other leaders, but they encourage you as well. Some of the names I've mentioned. What are some benefits of having um, some folks around you that know you well to
Yeah.
hold you accountable and pour into your life? How has the staff at Sojourn strengthened you personally,
Yeah.
Pastor Jamaal?
Well, I appreciate that. And I would say too, I do get to pour in to these other leaders, but really I benefit from just having so many uh, mature, godly elders and people around. So even like the leadership cohort, that's not all on me. We've got all of our elders are involved, come and spend time with them at some point. So it really is a team effort. So I would say for me, um, yeah, the Lord has just fostered a community at Sojourn and on our team where we just enjoy being around each other. Um, we have learned if there is conflict to deal with it and deal with it in a more healthy way.
Hmm.
And I just and generally with our elders and our staff, it's just an encouraging thing. Like we are, value honesty, humility, uh, teamwork. We say, the team gets the trophy. So
Hmm.
creating an atmosphere where it's about lifting each other up and encouraging each other. My wife and I just feel very blessed because we have a lot of people around us who just intentionally encourage us and who want to see us healthy and leading from the inside out. So we have benefited from practicing Sabbath and having a culture now at our church where everyone who's on staff knows that's an expectation that you have at least a 24-hour period where you rest, where you stop, rest. We say delight, right, and worship the Lord. And and so I think that the Lord has really blessed us to be around a group of people who want that for us.
I love the quote that the team gets the trophy. I'm gonna credit Jamal Williams for that quote every time I use it from here on out. So you mentioned the discipline of a Sabbath and practicing a Sabbath. Who has influenced you on just that particular practice, spiritual healthiness, that sort of thing? Who's someone that's been a big influence on you, a writer or even someone that's just a friend?
Yeah, I think the book that really where it stuck was Emotionally Healthy Leader by
Well,
Pete
I was going to ask you if it was Pete Scazzero, and so I thought it was better to ask you the question than give you the give.
Yeah, years ago, reading his Emotionally Healthy Leader, in that chapter specifically on Sabbath, and as with anyone we read, you may not, agree with everything they say, but
Yep.
the Lord really used that chapter um, to send me on a journey of uh, just healthier rhythms.
Hmm.
And I've also had some great mentors who always emphasize the root before the fruit.
Yeah, wow. So Pete Scazzero, emotionally healthy spirituality, started a church in New York City, um, ran hard like many of us do, reached a place with unhealthy ministry practices to a point where his wife came to him and said, I'm going to change churches. I don't
Yeah,
want you to be my pastor anymore.
right.
If your wife doesn't want you as a pastor, things aren't going very well for
That's right.
you
That's right.
as a key leader. And he began to experience some shifts. And you made this statement. I don't agree. We don't agree with everything anyone says except Jesus and the scriptures. But Pete Scazzero has a lot of things to
Yeah,
say about healthy ministry,
yeah,
rhythms, and
yeah.
practices because he's lived through it and
Uh-huh.
coming from that place of
Yeah, he's
experience.
one of my favorite sources to just go to for spiritual formation and rhythms,
Yeah.
and I've been deeply blessed by him.
Pastor Jamaal, what do you say to the single staff pastor who kind of in many cases feels alone, that he doesn't have an elder structure developed around him, or the deacon model may not be as healthy as it could be, and he doesn't have any additional staff folks, and in many cases he feels like he's trying to make decisions by himself and lead in ways that the church he's trying to lead healthy, but the church may not see it that way. How do you help and encourage a guy like that? What can he do?
Yeah, I would say one, live from the inside out.
Yeah.
The best way that you can impact people is by being a non-anxious presence that um, is modeling the way of Jesus. And it's hard to model the way of Jesus if you're irritated, if you're operating in the flesh, if you're cold shouldering people, if you're complaining. So set up rhythms that are going to allow you to be healthy. Second, I would just say, man, less is more. I'm just a big believer, and a lot of times we just busy ourselves to death. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is a great resource. I think anything by Eugene Peterson, just to slow you down and remember what matters most. And third, I would say pinpoint exactly what your pain points are, and to intentionally pray over them. I remember when I was at Forest in a very similar situation after the pastor left, had great deacons. Um, but didn't really have associate pastors to journey with, and just begin to pray for him. And the Lord sent a guy named Mayshiel Lewis, who was a deacon at the time, but had a call on his life. He accepted. Nate Bishop sent a couple other associate pastors who became elders from other churches. And then I began to pray for friends. My wife and I felt like we didn't have too many couples that we could just be honest with, and that could kind of help shepherd us and just be people that we hang out with. And the Lord allow friendships to emerge from within and without. Uh, Begin to pray for a mentor. I'm like, Lord, I need some mentors. And the Lord, that was actually in the state, and not uh, just outside of the state, which my pastor from Michigan, I'm so thankful for. And the Lord sent that. I'm just amazed at how when we take time to pray and to pinpoint pain points, how faithful the Lord is to answer those prayers. He may not answer them in the next week or next month, but man, I just look back and look at all the answer prayers. Like he cares for you. He wants you to flourish. And so that made me redefine success. That made me having an honest conversation. Remember, I was at Forest, man, and there was just a culture of the pastor kind of doing everything. I was like, hey, and just sitting down with the deacons and the church and saying, y'all, I feel like by the time I get to Sunday morning, I'm just exhausted. I don't have the energy to preach a thoughtful, good sermon because there's an expectation. Visit. If someone goes to the hospital that week, no matter if they're there for a day, like you're supposed to go across town, and just being able to share that with the church and say, what is a deacon? What is a expectation of a pastor? How am I using my time? helping them into my life and saying like, hey, I don't want to be, not able to exercise. I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to not have a date night. Like I need these rhythms in place. And that means that I may not be able to visit you in the hospital if something happens or whatever, and that doesn't mean I care. It just means I'm one person. And so creating a culture where the body was caring for the body really helped.
Well, Pastor Jamaal, you just rattled off some incredible counsel. I mean, for a simple question, what do you say that single staff guy? But your answer works for all of us. Man, live from the inside out, which Larry Crabb wrote some stuff on that years and years ago that has been helpful. Less is more. You cited the book. I think is it John Mark Comer or John Comer?
Yeah.
Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Incredible.
Yes.
Book.
Yes.
Yeah, I think every ministry leader would benefit from reading it, and then pinpoint your pain points and pray for them. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
brother. And the good thing about it is every bit of it came out of experience. It came out of your own trouble. Well, that helps me. It'll help others too. Jamaal, how do you try to incorporate evangelism intentionally into the ministry of Sojourn Church?
Yeah, that's a great question. One, by modeling as a pastor. My wife and I really try to model evangelism by opening our home to our neighbors and making sure that there's space in our schedule to build relationship with non-believers. And my wife does an incredible job of that, whether it's baking dog treats for a new family that's moved in or inviting them over for dinner. We do this thing where she kind of will open the house on a Saturday, send out flyers to neighbors and say, hey, next Saturday, if you can make it, we're just making waffles and we're just hanging out and things like that. So I think just by modeling it as elders, pre-COVID, we had a sheet as leaders of gospel shares where we would write down people's name, and we have a goal in the beginning of the year. I think that year is like, hey, for our 17 elders, we want to share the gospel 75 times with someone, who is outside of our church context, and writing their names down, telling the story to start the elder meeting and praying. And then I think emphasizing the identity of a sent one as often as we can, and making that common language that we all are sent. We're called to live sent where we live, work, and play.
Was Brad Bell at Sojourn during your time there?
He was. Love Brad. Yeah.
He's having a good ministry at Antioch.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter is a member there and active in that church, and I appreciate Brad.
Yeah.
Well, so how do you stay fresh in learning, Jamaal, as a leader? You mentioned several books that you're reading, so apparently you read. Anything else, or is it mostly reading, or is it something else?
Well, everyone won't be able to do this because I know we have a lot of bivocational pastors, but even if not, I think just finding rhythms and protecting that time to learn. So for me, of course, not being bivocational, from 9 to 1 every day of the week is my time with the Lord and to read. And so I try to just do that. And then from like 1 to 4, 1 to 5 will be meeting days. And that's really helped me to protect that time, to just be in the Word, to get ahead on stuff. I try to read outside of sermon prep, 15 minutes in the morning from one book, around lunch, another 15 minutes, and then before I go to sleep, 15 minutes at night, and kind of have them set up already where I'm going to sit. And that has really helped me to work through a number of books in a small way. So you're talking about maybe 3 chapters a day, just built in.
Yes, you developed a good, healthy structure and good systems, and you have to have a system if you're going to do anything. If we go through life random, man, we end up wasting a lot of time scrolling Facebook and Twitter. Hey, my last question. We're right here at Christmas season, and folks are busy all the time, but this can be a busy time as well. What's your encouragement to ministry leaders to not miss out on the story of the birth of Christ and to enjoy Jesus while they're also trying to help their family enjoy it? Just any thoughts that you'd share there as we wrap
up? I know it sounds overly simplistic, and I love to hear your thoughts on this, Dr. Gray, but I just say less is more. The story. You've been sitting in it for a long time. maybe take out less, and you're preaching and teaching from it, and just focus maybe on one point instead of three, or and just practice being present.
I think that's wise. I shared with someone today that I've never holiday preaching for me has always been a challenge. It feels a little forced in some way, and so I think that if a guy can get honest with the Lord about that and say, Lord, this just feels forced, and I don't want it to be. I mean, it might be that God wants to highlight a portion of the Christmas story through someone that might feel like a little different sermon, but man, it's just right on track with if you're preaching Jesus, you're going to be okay around Christmas time, right?
You are, and it's okay to, brush off some old sermons.
That's right.
If you don't remember it and you spent 15 hours writing it, it's a good chance other people don't either.
That's exactly right.
More care about your family, be present to people, and follow the Spirit, and I think the Spirit will work.
Jamaal, I appreciate you. Appreciate your ministry at Sojourn. It's been fun to kind of watch the church and even see this collective work as you're giving leadership at Sojourn Midtown. And man, y'all's work is making a difference. The Lord's using you.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm proud to, just be a part of a convention that's led by you and others who take this work serious. So
thank you. It's an honor. Hey, I want to ask if you'd do something. You're a pastor at heart, and there are literally hundreds of volunteers in the western part of our state right now serving people. Pastors are pouring themselves out. You know, Jesus, when the woman touched his garment, something went out of him. He knew something had gone out of him. These guys are giving out everything right now. Would you just pray for those pastors, especially in the west or western part of our state, as they're giving out so much? And that'll wrap up our time.
Thank you. Yeah, let's pray. Lord, I do come to you and ask you to be merciful to those who are hurting, to those who have lost so much and whose space looks so much different. The city that they were in looks so much different. I pray, Father God, that you would be with pastors and Christians who are on the ground. I pray, Father God, that your Holy Spirit would just comfort them, and that they would find rest in you. Unless you built the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless you watch over a city, the watchman stays awake in vain. Would you remind pastors that even now it's in vain for them to rise early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for you give rest to your beloved. So as they work, I pray that they would have internal rest and to know that you are working and that everything will be okay. I pray that you'll protect their soul and protect their hearts. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Pastor Jamaal, thank you, and thank you and your family for your answering God's call in your life, your service in this part of our city.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gray, and it's always good to be my friend.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
You just heard from Pastor Jamaal Williams. What a great and gifted leader he is. Next time we gather will be in January, and you'll hear from Pastor Jameis Edwards at Pleasant Valley Community Church. Thank you for listening to Leadership Lessons.